Okay, so in a sense, this is a part 2 to the video I made about Jesse Ventura conspiracy theory, and it's about the wider issue of liberty in America, really. I decided to make 2 separate videos. Conspiracy theory, if you don't know, is sort of like investigations by the former Minnesota governor into X-Files type conspiracies. And well, you could check out that video for my thoughts on it. Specifically in this video, I want to focus on the issue of power in the world's biggest superpower, abuse of power in America. Often I've made videos, this is just the background, sorry, I'm just getting a lighter, burning my incense. I've made videos critical of Chinese human rights issues, and I stand by everything I've said in those videos. But some people may believe that I'm blind to Western abuses of power, and I'd like to talk a little bit about in this video why that's not the case. I believe there is some serious problems in America which are a significant threat to civil liberty, human rights. America is very, very far from perfect in terms of human rights, and I do think there's definitely an arrogance from the United States in claiming to be a beacon of freedom. There's countries in the world, I would argue, enjoy greater civil liberty than Americans do. I'm not going to say my country necessarily, but there are countries that do. There's a lot of issues I take with the United States, and I'll raise a few of them in this video. I'm not going to talk about the gun issue, because I think that's more to do with American public attitudes and the National Rifle Association than US lawmakers, because I do believe that a lot of US lawmakers are on the right side of common sense in that debate, so I have no issue with that. It's other issues I am very uncomfortable about. Number 1, police abusing their power. American police are absolutely no better at the moment than their Chinese counterparts. Arguably, maybe even worse. There's a very dangerous situation right now where American police, so many of them, seem to be above all reproach, and a lot of them are basically come across as psychotic, sociopathic control freaks. There have been cases after cases after cases documented with police abusing their power, and not just policemen, some police women as well. And this, if I was American, I would be deeply concerned about this. And it's not just a case of drug dealers being beaten up like Rodney King style. I'm talking about average citizens, people who haven't committed any crimes. Average Jill and Joe publics, who, I remember one case, a young couple were asking for directions. The policewoman, control freak that she was, decided then to book them for driving down the wrong highway. But it was an innocent mistake, the couple didn't know. They apologised, they were going to turn back, and she booked them. That's the sort of abuse of power that is typical, and there's many, many more examples where that came from, and much worse things. I believe that President Obama needs to be much more outspoken in this. Not just Obama, elected representatives, but I believe there's a dangerous situation at the moment where they're frightened that if they speak out against the police unions or police bodies will then go out and say, oh, you're not supporting people who are risking their lives against violent criminals. And this is something we're seeing in the UK as well. There's a very dangerous trend that when police power is questioned, they then turn that around and say you're attacking the people who are taking on the criminals. They believe they're above reproach, and far too often it's the case that when police corruption or police abuse of power is exposed, the I'm trying to remember the police chief, I think that's the equivalent term, instead of actually disciplining officers, they put them on desk duty, or they come out with very pathetic excuses. This is really quite I remember there was an audio of a police officer who was extremely disrespectful to a young woman who had alleged sexual abuse, and he refused to take her call on the grounds that she was sorry, I don't know if it was sexual abuse, it was domestic. I can't remember the exact details, but basically it was a young woman in a very serious situation. She was reaching out for help, and the officer refused to help her on the grounds that she used one or two swear words. Yeah, I remember now. Sorry, I don't have the case right in front of me. I think a family member, her father had passed out. He had cardiac problems. She phoned for help, and the officer responding refused to help because of the language that she was using. This is the sort of prima donna, control freak attitude too many American cops take. And there is legislation in force whereby murdering a police officer is considered a much bigger crime than if you murder a normal person. Now, I'm certainly not advocating murder of police officers. I believe murder is murder, it's a terrible thing. But I am very uncomfortable with the notion that if a police officer faces some sort of threat, somehow their life is worth more than an average citizen. Especially given the number of disgraceful cases where innocent people have died at the hands of police. So police abuse of power is a major issue. And that also extends to judges. American judges seem to have massive power, and they can actually increase the sentence if a defendant is seen to have a bad attitude. This is diabolical. This is like something that would really happen in a totalitarian state, and it's a sickening abuse of power. Another example is low-level drug users, not dealers, get thrown into prison with serial, violent gang members, rapists and so on. And in one of the most outrageous cases, I believe it was Texas, a young man was put in prison because he watched some sort of violent video game. I'm thinking off my head here, but I don't have the cases right in front of me, so I may not be getting detail for detail right, but the general situation here is true. He was put in jail for a month, and he was on suicide watch. This is the sort of warped, perverse sense of justice that often goes on in America, and it's diabolical. So that's a major issue. Now, I'm not naive. I know that America, like every country, has violent criminal scum. And I can understand the public desire for those people to face justice, but that can never be at the price of law enforcement officers being above the law. It can never be at the price of them abusing their power, or judges who have absolute power. This is dangerous. Clearly this is dangerous. Then of course we get into the whole NSA spying scandal. That's a major issue. I believe President Obama hasn't dealt with that very well. He's said too little too late. Yes, it's true that most countries have some sort of security services that can be described as similar, but really when you get to the point of snooping into private individuals' data, personal details, that should be alarming. When private citizens get that much snooping going on, it really is like something that would happen in a communist state. And we really, as democratic countries, cannot say we're much better when this sort of stuff goes on. Now, is America a democracy? Well, we have to ask, what does democracy mean? It means, at its root cause, people choose their elected representatives. That's the basic meaning of democracy. In that sense, America is. But some would argue the two big parties dominate America far too much. Now, in the 90s, when the third party got a lot of support, that may have been a time when America was at its most democratic point. I don't know. It is true that the two big parties have probably dominated America too much, just like in Britain the Labour and Conservative parties have dominated this country too much. But nevertheless, other political parties do exist, and they are legal. and freedom of expression is guaranteed in the American Constitution, it has to be considered those things do not exist in countries like China in the same way. So I don't think American democracy is entirely gone, but I do believe it's under threat. And there is definitely issues going on that American citizens really need to question. So the sort of things that Jesse Ventura talks about, we shouldn't just laugh them off. There is legitimate issues there, and on some level I do respect him for taking on those issues. So there is definitely problems in American society connected with power, connected with corruption, and in the world's biggest superpower, that is something that really needs to be scrutinized by American people. I remember in the Bush era there were protesters treated as terrorists and held against their will and so on when they were not being violent. That is a serious issue. It may have improved slightly in the Obama era, I don't know, but I do know that there's serious issues with American democracy. Really that's all I have to say on the matter. But police abuse of power would probably be the number one issue that concerns me. Also the use of the death penalty. I know it's not used in every case. I know the usage of the death penalty is rather limited when you consider the number of murders that take place in America. That far outweighs the number of people executed. But the use of the death penalty, in my opinion, means America cannot lecture any other country that has it. It's a bit hard to America to lecture Iran on the death penalty when America executes people. And sometimes there are botched executions. Now I know some individuals are guilty of heinous crimes, and I don't have time in this video to talk about the rights and wrongs of the death penalty, but it is not, in my opinion, conducive to human rights. America is not a beacon of human rights because there's far too many examples of America abusing human rights. I do believe Guantanamo should be shut down. It should have been shut down a long time ago. Obama promised that he would, and he still hasn't. That's a disgrace. Now, it can't all be blamed on him. There's powerful forces in Congress and so on who oppose that, but it's a disgrace that that still operates. And the use of waterboarding is torture. There's no two ways about it. In terms of the death penalty, I think it was the state of Wyoming used the gas chamber up until the 1960s. I mean, the only other regime, as far as I know, in history that done that was the Nazis. So America has to really, really be careful about lecturing any country on freedom and human rights. I'm not saying it shouldn't. I believe America does have a moral responsibility to talk about these things. But what I am saying is it should prove itself at the same time in tangent. I don't subscribe to the Ron Paul school of thought that, oh, we have all these problems, therefore we shouldn't do anything with the outside world. I agree with him that America needs to improve, but I disagree that America as a superpower has no moral responsibility to the outside world. So leave it there really. Thanks for watching.